Hello, welcome to day 28, and in today's lesson we'll be looking at how we can clean up all of our HTML and display them dynamically. The next thing we want to look at is, all of a sudden we just had all of these images right inside our employee folder. It shouldn't be so. There was something we missed, right? And all of the images came in when we were uploading the user profile. Those images ideally should be in the media folder. Now, what we can do, looking at things we can do, we can go to the settings and declare these two variables. Now, any variable in Python that you see with all capital letter indicate that it is constant. In other words, you can change the value. Now let's look for our settings. Settings, I think this is the one we're looking for. So we can just come below and just, okay, I think we already have static. What we can just add is media URL. Next thing we need to add are some line of code that help us to actually channel our media file. Let's see what we can do. If we go ahead and copy this line, we need to paste it on, let's say we need our URL. I'm just going to search. To search, you can just go to File. I think it should be Find. Yes, you can find through File. So I'm just going to say URL. The URL I am looking for should be in the main. Now we have default URL, which works. Okay, so what we need to just add is this conditional statement. So it's asking, where's our setting? You can just come here and copy the settings. You see all of this source code in your description. Yeah. So what about the static? We can also import the static as well. So I think the import should be here instead of having it at the top here. Let's just have our import here. Okay. So what we can do now, since we already declare in our settings that the media can be in the root, so we can just come here and declare a new variable, or a new folder rather. So we can call it media. Now inside this media is where we would have all of our media file that we upload on the database. Now remember that we also added a directory called employee. And let me show you what I mean. So here we actually say it should store them in employee folder. Now we need to copy all of this and move them to media employee. Cool. That works. Now what we need to do is we also need to create in this our main, let's create another template outside. So directory, templates. If you really want to understand, if you're confused at any point, you can just come to the README to see the structure. So you can see that we have templates, we have main, we have employee, right? The only thing that is not here is the media, right? Now let's get back to work. So in this, our template here, is where we're going to have our index, new file. We're going to have index.html. Now let's copy what we need in the index, just more or less like HTML markup. No, that's not what we want. This is what we want. Okay, now this is pretty much HTML markup, but all of this that you're seeing are the Django template tags. Django template tags are just more or less the tags that allow us to write code inside of HTML. You want to be able to write Python code inside HTML, and that's what this tag is doing. Now, if you look at this title here means that in every of your templates, you can create new title. We are going to look at all of that together, right? And what then happens is that in every website, you have one head, right? So you don't want to be repeating the head every time you have to display a template. So we're keeping everything that is constant here. Every constant thing, we're keeping it here. And we're also going ahead to keep whatever scripts that we need to run on all the pages. So instead of us, if you're going to have like 50 pages, you're just going to have one head and you're going to have one footer. Then every other thing is being populated in between. And that's what this is doing. Okay, now let's see our template. What do we need to remove? You can see that on our template here, let's just copy this head. Let's copy the whole of this. I'm just going to replace it with this, with the whole of this. Okay. Now let's see the footer as well. I'm just going to copy the footer. So the whole of this all the way to footer. I think we need to delete this now. We don't need it anymore. Let's come back here and we're going to remove this and just paste. Right? Still remaining this contents. Pretty much cool. So now how can we extend this, our index, to this list? We need to be able to connect them, right? So Python is just going to take this list and infuse it inside this whenever it's rendering. How can we do that? So let's say we want to extend. We can use the extend. So this time around, we can say, let's write a new tag. Now to write a Django tag, you have your curly braces with your percentage, and you close it as well with your curly braces and percentage. So now let's extend. Conventionally, we normally use base instead of index. So let's refactor it base because it's the base. So we can just say we want to extend the base. This should be a string, base.html. Once you extend, now the bases are where. Another thing we can do is to reference the block. Remember we had a block in the base, so you can just even copy it if you want. You have the block. Then when you have block like this, you need to have end of block as well, just like what you have here. End block content. So I'm just going to copy it and use it to wrap. Okay. I think pretty much those are the things we need. So right now, if we save it and even try to run our program. Let's look at our terminal. If we come back here and we refresh, Django is complaining right now. So Django is saying page not found, and page is not found because we are currently updating it. So let's finish the job. For us to be able to display it properly, we need to do two things. We need this view, right? And we also need to create a URL here. So in this view, what we need really is to call some views. So we want to import from Django, then URL. I think Django view. We want to import generic. Then let's say view. Let's import view. Okay, we need to import keyword first. Import keyword, then we have view. Great. Now let's declare another class. What we are doing basically is we're importing almost everything we need from Django, which makes sense because we installed it in the initial stage. So now let's declare our class. The class that we need to declare has to do with displaying the list. So we can just say class and call employee list. Then reference the view. Once we reference the view, we have our column. Then we need to just reference a couple of things. So we can call the template name. Then we need to then reference the template name. The template name we're referencing is inside of the template, then employee, then we have the list. So we can just say employee list.html. Okay, now we are getting error with Python because we didn't index it in to serve as a block of code. Now that we have this, one final part we need to deal with before we're able to display is the URL. And for us to really deal with the URL, we need to call or create a URL inside of our app. Because in Django, you could have several mini apps in your project. So the way you have the employee app, you can also have maybe like subscriber app, you can have blog app, whatever you're building, you can have multiple apps. So you want everything you're doing inside one app to stay inside the folder. And that's why we are going to be declaring our first URL, and the URL is going to be inside of the employee folder. So I'm just going to go ahead and right click and create new Python file. I'm going to call it URLs. So the first thing I need to import is, I can just say from Django.urls. I want to import paths. Then from the view, let's import also from the view. From our view, let's import employee list. Now that we have this, let us declare our URL. You can call it URL pattern. Patterns. Then we say equals to is going to be a list. Then in the list, we're just going to have all of the URLs that we have. So right here in the first instance, I'm going to say path. So we're calling this path here. And path has a parenthesis, is a function. Then we are going to declare our empty. Now, because this is going to be the .com, like there's not going to be paths. So the first URL you visit at all time is going to be like the home. So there's no maybe / username, there's nothing like that. So it's going to be empty. We're not adding any paths to it. So I'll just reference the employee list. I'm just going to go ahead and say employee list as view. I think this should have a bracket. Then we can have a name for it. The name can be anything, but I think I'm just going to call it employee list. I think I'll prefer underscore. Employee list. So pretty much we've defined our URL. All we need to do next is to link the URL with the master URL, which is going to be in the main application here. So, and to do that, remember, we need to then import the URL as well. So we're just going to import the include, and include is also in the Django URL. We're just going to say include. Now we want to include the URL from our employee app. So we can just say path, our parentheses. Let's leave this empty. Then we want to call the include function. Then we need to reference employee. So once we reference the employee, then we need to call the URLs. I think this should work. Let's try to run our program. If everything works perfectly, we should be able to see something. Now, our page is empty. Let's inspect and see. What do we have? Why is our page empty? Let's try to fix it. Let's see if we can change the view. Maybe it's the view. Let's say template view. Let's see if this will work. Oh, perfect. Template view did the magic. So we just changed the view from just normal view to template. Okay. Now we have everything. Everything works pretty fine. However, we need to make sure that we're able to reference all the static file so that our design can still look similar to what we had initially, at least before we then serve what we have on the database. And that's how we wrap it up on this one. If you like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on all our social media handles so that you can be notified each time we release a new tip. Until next time, I'll see you in the next one.